In the middle of the night, a man carrying a gun came to the house of a wanted criminal. He pried open the air vent and stuffed a beehive inside. Then he found a place to hide and waited for his prey to appear. Not long after, the criminal panicked and ran out screaming. The man immediately rushed to subdue the criminal. But when the criminal turned around, the man realized that this was not his target. Before he could understand what was happening, a gunshot suddenly rang out. The real criminal had appeared. Fortunately, the man was wearing a bulletproof vest. But his joy did not last for a few seconds when the criminal took a knife and cut a decisive line into the man's neck, killing him. Just when he thought he was dead, something terrible happened. 3 strange scratches suddenly appeared on the man's arm, and he immediately came back to life. When his consciousness gradually returned, Hub realized that he was being stuffed into a narrow wall. He didn't even think about what had just happened. He used all his strength to break the board. Hub stood up and looked in the mirror. He was horrified to find that there was still a clear, deep cut on his neck. It was like a reminder that Hub had just lost his life. Just then, a noise came from outside. Before Hub could hide, a man entered the room. He immediately screamed in fear when he saw the scene before his eyes. Hub rushed to control him. At this moment, the terrifying thing was no longer the weapon, but the fact that a dead person was still alive and acting. The man trembled and explained that he was hired to dispose of the body. If he had come all the way here, he must know who killed Hub. Hub said nothing, dragged the man and stuffed him into the trunk of the car. Then, Hub used tape to wrap around his neck to stop the bleeding. At that moment, Hub also noticed 3 scratches on his hand. No matter how hard Hub tried to wipe them, those 3 scratches could not be removed. However, Hub did not rush to take revenge but turned around and went home. After all, he was already dead, so life and death were no longer important. But as soon as Hub entered the garage, he suddenly received a strange phone call. It was an automated call with content like, "Congratulations on joining the Golden Kang family. If you need to, arrange a regional manager for introductory training. Please be quiet, otherwise I will castrate you. At Golden Kang Group, we will make the impossible possible." Hub thought that this was just a nonsense advertising call, so he did not pay much attention. However, he did not know that call was closely related to his upcoming fate. He went into the bathroom to sew up the wound on his neck. But what shocked him the most was that the fatal cut on his neck had completely healed on its own. It only left a faint red line, as if it had been lightly cut. Hub didn't understand what was going on, so he quickly went to his mother to ask clarification. At that moment, Hub encountered a pastor trying to convince his mother to return to church. After chasing the pastor away, Hub knew the horrifying truth from his mother. The 2 Billy brothers who murdered him had been bailed out of prison by Lucky a week ago. Lucky was the current lover of Hub's ex-wife, so it was very possible that Lucky hired Billy and Jeff to deal with Hub to gain custody of their son. After understanding everything, Hub was furious and prepared to find Lucky to take revenge. But because his ex-wife was in the way, Hub was forced to come up with a perfect plan. Just as Hub was editing the arrest warrant, the advertisement from Golden Kang Company rang again on the phone. This made him so angry that he immediately unplugged the phone. But just a second later, all the phones in the drawer rang at the same time, and all were calls from Golden Kang. Hub was angry and cursed the marketing crowd these days for being shameless. But Hub didn't have time to think too much because he still had important work to do. Toby was extremely scared when he saw the shovel and fertilizer bag in Hub's hand. But Hub said that these things weren't for Toby and welcomed him to Golden Kang. Hub went to Lucky's bar and saw his ex-wife Marion singing. On stage, Hub took the opportunity to capture Lucky, but unexpectedly his son suddenly appeared. Hub had no other choice, so he had to give up this plan. Hub went to his ex-wife and said that Lucky was a bastard. Last night, Lucky even hired someone to cut his throat. But Marion saw that Hub's neck had no wounds and thought he was joking. She gave Hub an agreement and wanted him to sign so she could take their son away from this place. Hub angrily left the bar. He decided to go to Billy and Jeff's hideout to take revenge. However, when he passed a church, he suddenly saw the pastor looking at him with eyes glowing with fire. What was even more frightening was that the pastor seemed to be chasing him. If he hadn't immediately sped off, he might have died again. Hub narrowly escaped and reached his destination. Hub gently approached the guard from behind and used his strength to kick open the door. Before Billy could react, Hub fired a shot, knocking him down on the spot. Seeing Hub suddenly appear, Jeff's face was scared, as if he had just seen a ghost, because it was clear that he had finished off Hub. Why was Hub still alive? All 3 were shot. In the end, all of them were tied to a chair by Hub. When Hub told Billy to call Lucky, Jeff suddenly looked out the window. They saw the pastor standing there looking at them with an unusual look. Hub immediately untied Jeff and ordered him to chase the pastor away. Hub dragged another person to hide in the room inside. However, when Hub locked out outside, he witnessed a horrifying scene. The lights in the house started to flicker continuously, and screams rang out outside the door. Jeff's body suddenly flew into the air and was twisted like a mop by an invisible force. Billy suffered the same fate. Hub saw the pastor's face suddenly become fierce and rushed straight towards them. Hub was also scared to the point of panic and immediately pulled the trigger, but the bullet had no effect on the pastor. In that dangerous moment, Hub did not hesitate to run away from the scene. As soon as Hub ran outside, the screaming man also became strangely silent. Hub was too distracted to go back to get his car, so he immediately waved his hand to stop passing truck and asked the driver to take him home. Hub had just entered the door when he saw his mother sitting with a strange woman. The woman was not polite and complained frankly. She said that she could not contact Hub, so she had to come to his house herself. Mitch told Hub that he was dead and even standing at the gates of hell. She was here to train Hub in his new job. Hub could stand here now entirely because they had temporarily revived him. Mitch said that Hub could consider this as a suspended sentence and that she was his execution supervisor, also known as bondsman. In return, Hub would have to work for Mitch from today. Hub is basically still a bounty hunter, but the only difference is that the target Hub hunts is now demons. Serving demons is Hub's new mission because he doesn't want to worry his mother. Hub initially intended to refuse Mitch's offer. However, the consequence is that Hub immediately collapsed in his house. Hub understood that the other party was not joking, so he had to tell his mother everything. However, his mother was extremely confused. She couldn't understand why her upright son could go to hell. Mitch didn't answer that question, but only began to explain Hub's job. Hub's mission is to capture escaped demons and send them back to hell. Once he fails to complete the quota, Hub will be summoned and will never be able to return to the human world again. Before Hub could ask, Mitch left a handbook for employees and left. Before leaving, Mitch warned Hub never to contact her again. Elsewhere, Lucky went to Billy and his gang's hideout to question why they couldn't deal with Hub, but what he saw was the corpses strewn all over the floor and the amputated limbs of his gang. Lucky was so scared that he immediately turned around and drove away. But then, Lucky suddenly saw Hub's car on the side of the road. A cry for help was heard from the trunk. Lucky carefully opened the trunk and saw Toby tied up inside. Toby immediately told them everything and said that it was all Hub's doing. At the same time, Hub received a file. It clearly stated the name of the demon that was the next target, along with specific coordinates. Hub's mother looked it up and found out that the target this time was Pastor John. That day, John discovered that the church suddenly lost power, but as soon as he turned the switch back on, a series of strange phenomena began to occur. His poster spontaneously caught fire, but it only burned the eyes and face of a demon that appeared in the mirror. The lights kept flickering. John immediately picked up the cross and began to read the Bible. He threw holy water everywhere. The mirrors that touched the holy water immediately shattered. However, in a corner that John could not see, a bolt of lightning quietly entered the chalice, causing the holy water to boil. As John continued to throw the holy water, the demon followed his arm and entered his body. Hub's eyes immediately flared up with a blue light and he soon collapsed. The demon had taken over John's body. It slowly stood up and healed the wound on the pastor's face. Hub had already prepared his weapon and was ready to go, but his mother was determined to follow him. As a veteran bounty hunter, she believed she could support her son, even though Hub tried to convince Kitty to stay in the car. How could she sit still? Kitty's sudden appearance almost scared Hub. Kitty had already arrived. It was unreasonable for Hub to chase her away now. So Kitty and Hub entered the main hall together. They saw half a human face lying on the floor. The two quickly concluded that the demon had left place. To ensure safety, Hub went to the bar to find Marion. Hub signed the agreement and told her to immediately take their son and leave town. It was clear that Hub still couldn't let go of the person he once loved. When he got home, Hub discovered that every time the demon approached, the lights in the house would flash violently, so they could rely on this characteristic to track it down. But Kitty was still troubled by the question of why her son was sent to hell. She asked Hub why he was sent to hell. Hub shook his head and said he didn't know. Maybe hell had the wrong person. But looking at his eyes, things didn't seem that simple. To avoid this topic, Hub immediately went into the equipment room. He picked up the necessary tools to hunt demons. When they were ready, Kitty and Hub began to follow the flashing streetlights. Finally, they reached the demon's hideout. Hub still told Kitty to stay in the car while he took his weapon and quietly entered the abandoned factory. As soon as he entered, Hub immediately saw characters drawn in blood on the floor. It was obvious that it was performing some kind of evil ritual. Hub raised his head and saw a man hanging upside down from the ceiling. The man died a horrible death. At that moment, the flashlight in Hub's hand suddenly went out and he was lifted into the air by a mysterious force. The demon appeared from the dark corner. Without hesitation, it threw Hub hard against the wall. Hub was lucky to keep keep his life, knowing that he was no match for it. Hub ran out of the factory and hid. Hub lured the demon into the trap he had prepared in advance. When he saw the demon trap, Hub immediately shot the tranquilizer, but it was clear that these things could not do anything to the demon. It roared loudly towards Kitty, who was reading the Bible. The loud roar broke Kitty's thigh bone. Seeing this, Hub changed weapons and immediately opened fire, but the gun was completely useless against it. The demon summoned a nearby iron barrel and hit Hub hard, causing him to fall. Just as it was about to kill Hub, Kitty shot the demon in time to save him. While the demon was still healing, Hub got up and knocked over a cabinet, smashing its head. The hellfire erupted and burned the demon's soul. The fire sent the demon back to where it belonged. Kitty and Hub thought their mission was complete. What they didn't realize was that Toby, who was hiding in the corner, had filmed the entire incident. At the same time, another demon appeared in the world. The sound of running water suddenly echoed in the bathroom. The girl thought that her younger brother was secretly sharing the bathroom again, but when she pulled the curtain open, there was no one inside. However, when the girl had just turned off the water valve and was about to leave, the shower suddenly turned on again. Then all the other faucets in the room started spraying water. The girl immediately panicked. When the last water valve was turned on, the silhouette of a demon suddenly appeared in the mirror. Immediately after that, a strange force lifted her into the air. Before she could react, she was thrown hard into the bathtub. The pull was so strong that she could not struggle to get out of the water, but no one appeared to save the girl. At this time, Hub was being scolded by his mother. Kitty was worried that if Hub did not work seriously, he would be taken back to hell by the devil. But Hub appeared calm and confident because he thought that only he was suitable for this job, so the hell chose him for this position. Then he asked his mother to watch the task assigning machine for him. Then, Hub took a stack of documents and left the house. On the way, Hub stopped Lucky's car because he wanted to take his son to school himself before his ex-wife left town. Lucky was unhappy, but Marion stopped him and said to consider this a gentle goodbye. Hub wanted to leave a good impression, so he let his son drive to school. However, Hub actually had his own plan in mind. While on the way, Hub took out Lucky's criminal record and showed it to his son. Hub then told his son that Lucky was a jerk. Hub hoped Cade could persuade his mother to reconsider, but Cade was quite fond of Lucky. Cade said that Lucky always made his mother happy and even bought a house for Cade and Marion to live together. After saying that, Cade opened the door to get out of the car. Hub quickly held his son back. Hub tried to explain that everything Lucky did would sooner or later harm Cade and Marion. However, before Hub could convince his son, his mother called. Kitty informed him that she had discovered a new demon called Manua. It originated from ancient Egypt and was an extremely powerful creature that lived underwater. Therefore, in order to destroy it, absolutely do not let it near any water source. Kitty looked at the image displayed on the computer and felt that this action would be extremely dangerous. Kitty told Hub to be absolutely careful. Then the two of them quickly arrived at the designated location. Hub went to observe the surroundings of the house. Seeing the water flowing from the upper floor, he was sure that the demon was in the house. Hub used the unlocking technique to get in. As soon as he entered, he saw the floor flooded. When he entered the bathroom, the place had become a miniature ocean, but there was no sign of humans or demons. Looking at the blood stains on the wall, Hub confirmed that the demon had left this place. If it mixed in with the crowd, it would cause an unpredictable disaster. They were trying to catch a water demon. There were hundreds of lakes, rivers, and streams around the town, so finding where it was hiding was extremely difficult. But that was not the worst thing, because Toby brought the photos he took of Hub last night to Lucky. Toby told Lucky that Hub and his mother were witches and they were performing black magic rituals. Lucky looked at Toby as if he was crazy because Lucky was a materialist. He did not believe in ghosts or gods at all. But when he looked at the photos in his hand, Lucky came up with an idea to push Hub away from Marion. Right after that, Lucky went straight to Hub's house, but Kitty did not welcome him. Kitty's attitude was very unpleasant when facing Lucky. Knowing that he could not convince Kitty, Lucky had to leave the photos and give a warning. Hub and her had better stay away from Lucky's family, or else don't blame him for being rude. When looking at the photos in the documents, Kitty knew that something big had happened, so Kitty had to think of a way to make Lucky shut up. At this time, Cade was with Hub searching for the traces of the demon, but Hub could not tell his son the truth. Hub could only apologize for what had just happened. Hub said that he shouldn't have dug up Lucky's sinful past. At that moment, Hub suddenly discovered a broken fire hydrant. Hub immediately asked his son to stop car. According to the map in Hub's hand, the closest water source to the girl's house was a swimming center. Hub and Cade immediately went there. Hub climbed through the bathroom window to break in. Hub immediately saw water all over the floor. A shoe of a janitor was lying not far from that location. Hub followed the trail and entered the lobby, where he found the other shoe. When Hub was about to step stepped forward, a scene made him freeze in place. The cleaner's body was still standing upright at the bottom of the swimming pool, and around the body were triangular symbols like a ritual to summon evil spirits. While Hub was still confused, the demon suddenly jumped out from under the diving board and attacked him. It pulled Hub into the lake. The demon used all its strength to drown Hub. Hub quickly sank deep into the lake. The demon wanted to drown Hub to death, but he did not give up so easily. Hub pulled out the dagger on his person and slashed the demon once, then stabbed him again. However, those actions only stimulated the demon's evil nature. It immediately tightened its grip on Hub's neck, causing his consciousness to begin to fade. At that dangerous moment, Hub's instinct as a demon hunter helped him regain consciousness. Hub stabbed the knife straight into the demon's eye. Hellfire flared up and burned the demon's soul. Another demon was sent back to hell. Hub thought that this mission was successful, but as soon as he left the scene, a police car appeared outside the center's door. Hub was afraid that the police would mistake him for the murder of the janitor, so he immediately called his son and told his son to drive away from the area. Hub then called the police to report that a young man was driving drunk. Since the police chief was nearby, she was immediately dispatched to handle the case. When they left, Hub removed the hard drive of the surveillance camera to erase all traces of the scene. Marion was very angry with Hub's actions, so the two had a big argument. But Marion had no idea that Hub did everything to protect their son. The argument ended in a tense atmosphere. Hub felt extremely uneasy when he got home, because he knew very well why he was sent to hell. Just a month ago, Hub buried a girl's body with his own hands, and she was Lisa, the missing person that the whole town was looking for. Since becoming a demon hunter, Hub has been seeing Lisa appear in front of his window. She watched him with a haunting gaze. The torment in his mind made Hub think of confessing the whole truth, but he still hesitated. At that moment, the machine sent the next mission. This time, the target was called Eros, also known as the Earth Demon. It took advantage of the moment when a man was having lunch to sneak into his car. The man thought he was mistaken, but just a few seconds later, he was strangled by it. A puff of smoke entered the man's body. It made him writhe in pain, clutching his throat. Immediately after that, the man tore his own throat out. When he opened his eyes, the demon had completed the possession ritual perfectly. When Hub arrived, all he saw was an empty police car. Hub intended to call for help, but his mother was busy dealing with Lucky's matter. Kitty wanted to prevent Lucky from having the chance to trap Hub. First, Kitty set fire to Lucky's luxury car. Then Lucky just came out to check. Kitty secretly hid the weapon used to hunt demons the day before under Lucky's desk. Then Kitty put another bag of candy in the drawer. When she was about to leave, Kitty accidentally ran into Marion. Even though she knew Kitty had just done something shady, Marion did not expose her. Marion just gently asked Kitty to advise Hub not to interfere in her life anymore, but Kitty said that Marion should go and talk to him. Marion had no choice but to turn on the phone's GPS to find Hub's location. Because Kitty could not come to help and the demon seemed difficult to deal with this time, Hub decided to deal with it himself. However, while Hub was searching, Marion followed the GPS and came to him. Hub was extremely surprised to see Marion appear here. Hub immediately asked Marion to leave immediately, but she still hadn't forgotten about yesterday and forced him to apologize to their son. But the situation was so urgent that Hub didn't have the mind to argue with Marion. Suddenly, a strange sound came from afar. When she saw Hub pull out his weapon, Marion realized the seriousness of the situation. Marion hurriedly tried to leave, but when she turned a corner, she was shocked to see a large pile of dirt ahead. Out of curiosity, Marion walked over and discovered a body with its stomach stuffed with mud. Hub heard the scream and immediately ran over. Hub tried to calm Marion down and help her slowly calm down. However, when Hub was about to take Marion away, she suddenly saw a policeman digging dirt nearby, so she quickly called for help. Unexpectedly, that man was the demon who had possessed the policeman who had just discovered them. He roared and rushed to attack. Hub immediately opened fire, but normal bullets were completely useless against the demon. Marion was so stunned that she didn't have time to react. If Hub hadn't shouted, Marion might have forgotten to run away. The demon climbed straight up the wall. In the blink of an eye, it had approached Hub and pounded hard, knocking him to the floor. Seeing Hub struggling to defend himself, Marion immediately grabbed an iron pickaxe on the shelf and stabbed the demon straight in the back with all her might. But that attack wasn't enough to cause damage, so it only made it change targets and become even madder. At the critical moment, a gunshot rang out. Hub had escaped and fired a shot shot that killed the demon. Hub then led Marion safely out of the supermarket. When Marion got home, she still hadn't calmed down. Knowing that demons really existed had completely shattered her worldview. While Marion was taking a shower, Hub sat down to review all the information about the 3 demons he had hunted. He found out that they seemed to be performing some kind of sacrificial ritual. Hub wanted to clarify the matter, so he called Mitch, but she immediately refused to contact him because they were not allowed to communicate with each other. Hub still patiently explained his whole experience. However, Marion was like Kitty. They still could not understand why Hub was sent to hell after losing his life. At this time, Hub still had no intention of telling the truth, so he just made up an excuse to get over it. At the same time, Marion finally believed that Lucky was the one who hired someone to kill Hub. It seemed that it was time for Marion to break up with Lucky. Hub took the opportunity to tell her to take their son out of town as soon as possible. They would return when it was safe. Then the police received a report and searched Lucky's bar. He was arrested on the spot. It seemed that Hub and his mother finally had a few days of peace. Marion got into the police car and officially said goodbye to Lucky. After that, she said goodbye to Hub and took her son out of town. Hub thought that everything was resolved perfectly, but the police chief began to feel that something was wrong. Hub had previously called the police station to ask for information about a suspicious male police officer, so this small detail caused the police chief to start following Hub. As a chosen demon hunter, Hub also felt that there was something very unusual about the previous events. Coincidentally, he saw his mother reading the demon encyclopedia, and there was a page of information that made him suddenly think of something. While Hub was researching further, 2 other demons escaped from hell. They began to search for a host to possess. The tire exploded, causing a woman to be thrown hundreds of meters away. Only when she calmed down did she see that the truck had been overturned. The woman ran to check on her husband inside in a panic. She was horrified to find that both her husband and the driver were dead. Their mouths were even filled with their own small and large intestines. Through studying the inverted pentagon formation recorded in the book, Hub discovered the pattern of the demon's appearance. Currently, the water demon, earth demon, and thunder demon had appeared. All 3 had sacrificed a human life. Combining the locations of their appearances with the triangular symbols around the scene, Hub deduced that the next 2 demons would be the wind demon and the fire demon. The coordinates were in the northeast direction respectively. When connecting these points with a string, they formed a complete inverted pentagon. It was said that this formation could reverse space and time, so it seemed that the demons were summoning an even more terrifying force. Realizing the seriousness of the matter, Hub immediately went to Mitch's house, but she did not welcome him because demon hunters are not allowed to contact their superiors directly. Hub was worried and tried to convince her to look at the documents. He said that something big was about to happen, but she still coldly asked him to leave. Hub had to tell her that he had seen Mitch's fundraising website. He also saw the article about her son being miraculously cured. Through that, Hub could also be sure that hell had Mitch's weakness in his hands. It turned out that 9 years ago, Mitch's son had cancer, forcing her to run everywhere for help. But the huge cost of treatment had devastated her family. Even if she sold all her assets, she still could not raise a small part of the hospital bill. At the end of the road, Mitch once intended to sell her kidney, but while she was searching online, an advertisement from Golden Kang Company automatically popped up. The advertisement stated that if she filled out a form and sold her soul, company would help her fulfill any wish. At first, Mitch thought it was just a scam advertisement and was about to close it, but then the form on the website was automatically filled in with all her information. At the last section of the terms and conditions, it clearly stated that if Mitch confirmed selling her soul, the company would cure her son's cancer. With that only ray of hope, Mitch did not hesitate to click the confirmation button. The next day, a man came to Mitch's house. He brought a fax machine and placed it in the living room. The man said that this device could connect directly to hell. From now on, all her work would be communicated through it. Mitch was skeptical and asked him what her job was. The man explained that her job was mainly recruiting. Later on, she might have to deal with some troublesome personnel matters. For example, handling soul retrieval requests or supervising bounty hunters. But in the beginning, her job was simply to promote the soul for miracle exchange. In other words, she had to go around brainwashing people and enticing them to trade their souls in exchange for wishes. However, as a superior, for every successful soul transaction, the man would be credited with 1/3 of his efforts. It was like you had to pay tribute to your superior. The Golden Kang Group was essentially a multi-level marketing model for selling souls. They preferred to call it limited multi-level marketing. To be successful, she needed to understand the motives of the target. After explaining everything, the man saw Mitch still had doubts. So the man said to her again that even if she signed the contract, her son's condition would not get worse. But if it was true, then maybe she could still dance at her son's wedding. Those words touched Mitch's heart, and she immediately signed the contract. Seeing this, the other party took out a printer cartridge. His expression was a bit awkward. She had already signed it, so now all they needed was her fingerprint. Suddenly, a sharp thorn popped out and stabbed Mitch's finger, causing her hand to bleed. Mitch used that drop of blood to press down on the contract. The man quickly took back the paper as if he was afraid she would change her mind. Then he sent the contract back to headquarters. As soon as the contract took effect, Mitch looked into the mirror and saw a strange world. The man comforted Mitch not to worry, because sooner or later, she would get used to it. As soon as the other person finished speaking, 3 sharp scratches appeared on Mitch's arm. That was the symbol of a person working for hell. Since that day, Mitch's son grew up healthy and strong, and she had to go everywhere to entice people to sell their souls. Hub now knew about Mitch's past. He felt extremely sympathetic. He told Mitch that they were both in the same situation, so why didn't she help him? Hub immediately showed Mitch the documents, but Mitch got angry and said that she and he were not the same kind of people. Hub went to hell because of his own actions. Mitch went voluntarily and because of love. As a manager, she would not interfere in the affairs of demon hunters. Hub thought that was too selfish, so Hub got angry and scolded Mitch. Hub said that she was sitting around calculating her quota every day while the person she gave it to, the devil, was still alive. Mitch's actions were no different from those of a murderer. Hearing this, Mitch immediately kicked Hub out of the house. Seeing that he couldn't convince Mitch, Hub threw the documents on the floor and angrily left. But on the way home, his mother called. She informed him that a new devil had appeared a few hours ago. Hub immediately guessed that it was a fire devil or a wind devil. Kitty said that its name was Sepharis and that it was a wind devil. Its ultimate move was the kiss of death for its victims. Hub immediately went to the scene as instructed by his mother. However, all Hub saw were 2 pools of blood. If the devil had to kill the victim first and then enter the other person's body, that meant that this time there were 2 devils appearing. After combining the data from his investigation, Hub determined that they had gone east because the wind element was on the right wing of the inverted pentagon, and there was a river in that direction. To cross that river, one could only go through a single bridge, so Hub decided to go to the bridge first to ambush. Hub waited until late at night and finally saw a group of people stepping onto the bridge. After using the scope to check, Hub determined that they were indeed the 2 demons he was looking for, but one of the demons was carrying a woman on its back. This made it difficult for Hub to strike accurately. To ensure a precise finish, Hub turned on the high-powered headlights and without hesitation pulled trigger. The demon immediately threw the woman down. It was about to charge forward but was then shot by Hub. The remaining demon immediately jumped onto the bridge. Hub was confused and didn't know what to do because the woman blocked his way. Just as Hub was hesitating, a car suddenly rushed straight towards him. Hub staggered out of the car. He was about to reach for his weapon when a foot stepped on him. The person who just appeared was Lucky, who had just been released from prison. Lucky kicked Hub hard. Meanwhile, because Hub hadn't come home all night, Kitty worriedly ran to the area around the bridge to search, but all she found was a discarded bullet casing. She was about to call Hub when she discovered that his phone was left in the car. Just then, the radio monitoring the police station's frequency rang. It reported that a murder had just occurred in town. Kitty immediately drove to the scene. She silently prayed that the victim wasn't Hub. When Kitty squeezed through the crowd, she saw a woman's body lying in the middle of a magic triangle. Knowing that it wasn't her son, Kitty was temporarily relieved. Not wanting to attract attention, she prepared to leave the scene. But at this moment, the police chief noticed Kitty. She stopped Kitty and asked where you were going. Kitty replied that she was delivering documents to the court, but the police chief asked if anyone was delivering mail wearing a bulletproof vest like her. Kitty just gave a forced smile, but was still polite. The police chief had no choice but to let Kitty go, but her suspicions grew even more. At this time, Hub was taken home by Lucky. The first thing Lucky did was to make Hub pay for what happened before. Lucky tied Hub to a chair and prepared to record a video forcing him to confess to murder. It turned out that a month ago, when Hub found out that Lucky was dating Marion, Hub went to Lucky's bar to teach him a lesson. However, Hub underestimated the bodyguards next to Lucky. After punching Lucky, Hub was beaten to death by the bodyguards. Because he was so angry, Hub drank 2 bottles of wine and waited until the bar closed to return with his weapon. Hub was determined to deal with Lucky to end everything. When he aimed and hit the target, Hub rushed up to confirm. Hub was extremely frightened when he realized that the person who was shot was not Lucky, but Lisa. She was wearing a hat like Lucky. The scene before his eyes immediately sobered Hub. At that time, Lisa begged for her life in despair, but before Hub could call for help, she died. Finally, Hub panicked and collapsed. After a while of hesitation, Hub decided to bury Lisa's body himself to hide the truth. However, what Hub did not expect was that Lucky on the upper floor witnessed him moving the body. Lucky said that he had heard Marion say that Hub had killed someone. Lucky wanted to trick Hub into admitting in the video, but he refused to confess, so Lucky had to torture him. When Lucky was about to continue the interrogation, a strange noise suddenly sounded outside. Lucky thought that Hub's mother had returned, so he planned to kill both of them. But then Lucky witnessed something terrible. When Lucky was knocked down by something, Hub struggled to escape from the handcuffs. Hub used his foot to hook a hammer nearby and pried open the remaining handcuff on his other hand. When Hub walked out of the room, he saw Lucky being beaten to almost death by a demon. Lucky realized that his weapon was useless against the demon, so he crawled under the car to try to escape, but the demon refused to let him go. Then the demon dragged Lucky out and threw him hard against the wall. Hub saw that and immediately loaded his gun to prepare for battle, but he did not notice that there was danger behind him. Only when he felt a cold air behind him did Hub turn around. Hub carefully moved forward and fired straight at the demon hiding on the ceiling. The accurate shot took down the demon. Seeing his comrade in danger, the remaining demon immediately let go of Lucky and rushed forward. But before he could get close, Hub had already dealt with it. After the first demon, Lucky took the opportunity to get in the car and run away. Lucky drove and chanted the Bible. When he saw the remaining demon rushing towards him, Hub quickly fired, but just as he was about to finish it off, Hub discovered that his gun was out of bullets. The demon began to wake up. Hub quickly grabbed the chainsaw. As soon as the demon got close, he activated it and stabbed it straight in the head. Flames of hell flared up and burned the two wind demons. The flames sent the two demons back to hell in humiliation. Hub was afraid that he would be burned as well, so he quickly used a fire extinguisher to put out the fire. Then he contacted his mother. Kitty heard her son's voice and immediately stopped searching and returned. While his mother was bandaging his wound, he was about to tell the real reason why he was sent to hell, but the sound of a car horn outside interrupted the story. Unexpectedly, Marion returned with her son. Marion wanted Hub to tell Cade everything about the demon hunting, because that day, Marion received a call from the police chief. They asked her if she was with Hub when the supermarket burned down. Although Marion made up a perfect lie, she didn't expect the camera outside to capture the two of them. This meant that she was also involved in the fire. The police chief already suspected Hub, and now that she had evidence, she immediately ordered her subordinates to investigate further. From the police chief's tone, Marion immediately guessed that something was up, so Marion hurriedly took Cade back to find Hub. Knowing that he couldn't hide it anymore, Hub had to tell him the whole truth. He tried to convince his son to leave as soon as possible, but Cade wanted to fight with Hub. Marion also decided to stay here. At this time, the demon hunting war had truly become a family affair. Everyone was digging their own graves. Hub, Marion, and her son proceeded to clean up the remaining demon corpses. At that moment, a strange ringtone rang. Marion immediately recognized that it was Lucky's phone. Marion happened to know the password to open the phone. Hub began to fear that Marion would discover his secret, so he warned her that there was a video of Lucky torturing him on the phone. If she wanted to watch it, she had to prepare herself first. Hearing that, Marion immediately threw the phone down. Marion cursed Lucky as a bastard who did not deserve to be human. Taking advantage of the moment Marion left the room, Hub quickly grabbed a hammer and smashed the phone. At this time, Lucky had gone to the church and was praying to God to turn himself into a holy warrior. Lucky wanted God to give him the power to punish Hub. The family reunion made Kitty no longer want to ask why her son was sent to hell. Hub also expressed that he was trying to fix the mistakes of the past. Thinking that everything would finally turn for the better, the hell sent down a new mission. This time the demon's name was Paralysis. It was a genuine fire demon that often lurked in blazing volcanoes and burning abysses. This demon could release destructive fire that burned the entire land into a sea of fire. Everyone had to destroy it before the final sacrifice took place. Otherwise, something terrible would be summoned. Perhaps this would be Hub's last mission. No one knew if he would be freed or dragged back to hell, so Kitty suggested that the whole family pray for Hub. However, the sound of car horns outside interrupted the prayer. Mitch rushed over and said that this mission was extremely dangerous. dangerous, because if the fire demon sacrificed enough people and completed the pentagonal reversal formation, it would release one of the 7 sealed demons. That demon used to be an angel, but then it betrayed God and joined Lucifer's army. If that demon was released, the battle between heaven and hell would begin, and humanity would become a sacrifice between the two forces. To put it simply, the end of the world was near. The group heard this and immediately took action. Although Mitch did not want to participate because of her son, she was forced to follow everyone to the residential area where the fire demon appeared. They disguised themselves as firefighters and inspected each house. Hub, as a demon hunter, could see straight to recognize demons with the naked eye. Mitch had to use a mirror to observe. However, after a thorough search, the group could not find any signs of demons. They ran into a madman who was shooting for no reason. If Hub hadn't reacted in time, he might have died before he could kill the demon. The group panicked and hid behind the car. At first, Hub didn't want to get involved with this madman, but they checked every house and still couldn't find the demon. Hub suddenly realized that the demon was most likely hiding in the madman's house, so Hub had to ask the group to distract the madman so he could sneak in and suddenly control it. After pulling the madman out, Mitch quickly went inside to check the house. At that moment, Mitch saw a boy. The boy didn't say a word but just silently stared at Mitch. Mitch used a mirror to observe and discovered that the boy was the demon. But before she could act, the ground suddenly cracked deeply. Mitch was about to pull the trigger, but when she saw the face that looked exactly like her son, she couldn't bear to do it. Just a second later, disaster struck. A bottomless abyss appeared before her eyes. Hub also understood that Mitch had been buried forever in the underworld. That also meant that the final sacrificial ritual had been completed, and one of the 7 great demons was about to be summoned. But at the moment, they still didn't know which demon it would be. The whole family gathered, but everyone's hearts were heavy with sadness because they were afraid that Hub would be sent back to hell after this failure. To dispel the gloomy atmosphere, Hub began to sing. Hub sang loudly the song that he and Marion had composed together, but that song made the atmosphere even sadder. Marion quietly went to see Hub. She once again confessed her feelings for him. It seemed that their love was very deep now. Not long after, Hell sent a new mission, and this time, the target was named Lilith. It was an extremely powerful demon, second only to Lucifer. But when he looked at coordinates on the map, Hub's expression suddenly changed because the place where Lilith descended was the place where he had buried Lisa's body. After Lilith revived, she appeared outside a house with lights on. She looked through the window and saw the rotating record. The sound inside made her feel like she was lost in fascination. But just a second later, Lilith seemed to be attracted by something. She opened her wings and flew up and landed on the roof of a truck. It turned out that there was a more exciting song playing there, and that was what drew Lilith there. Hub rushed to the cemetery, but all he saw was an empty grave. It also made him understand that this matter had gotten out of control. But what was worse was that Lucky went to the police station and accused Hub of attempted murder. Lucky submitted the photos taken by Toby to the police chief. The police chief saw the clear evidence in his hand and immediately ordered the arrest of the entire Hub family. At this time, Hub was sleeping next to the grave all night. Marion brought a cup of coffee to find him, but Hub's pained expression made her realize that something was wrong. She immediately asked what the hole behind him was. Knowing that he could not hide it any longer, Hub confessed everything. Hub said that he had accidentally killed Lisa, and now she had become the demon Lilith, returning to the human world. Hub begged his family to join him in confronting the demon he had created, but after knowing the truth, everyone was indignant and despised him. Marion decided to take their son away, and his mother was so disappointed that she slammed the door shut. In despair, Hub could only go out to the backyard and bang on the wooden stake. He wanted to vent all the pain he had stored up in his heart, but just as Hub was about to give up everything, a car suddenly appeared in that area. The man laughed and got out of the car, then signaled for the group to get out immediately. The man said that he believed in Hub, so Hub, don't mess things up. Suddenly Mitch appeared in Hub's astonished eyes. It seemed that the devil still hadn't given up on the two of them. Mitch announced that Lilith was their last mission. When everything was over, the two of them would be sent back to hell. Whether they did or didn't do anything, the result would be the same. So Hub was discouraged and wanted to give up everything. He flatly refused this mission. However, Mitch said that everything she did was for her son. At least after Mitch disappeared, her loved ones could still live on. Those words made Hub very emotional. Even if Hub had to go to hell, at least his loved ones would still live in peace. Mitch recounted that Lilith was once an angel with a clear singing voice in heaven. That voice made her loved by God, but also made the other angels jealous. In the end, they tricked her into joining Lucifer's rebel army so that God could punish her. God banished Lilith to a place where there was never any music. That was also the reason Lilith was attracted to sound. Currently, Lilith Lilith was in a restaurant in town, absorbed in the music coming from the speakers. She had no idea that people were talking behind her back. Everyone had heard rumors that Lilith wanted to cause the end of the world to take revenge on God, but the truth was that the devil, king of hell, had fallen in love with Lilith. So, she always tried to find a way to escape. Since her previous escape from hell, Lilith had always vented her anger on every man she met. Lilith used her mind control ability to make them do stupid things. At this moment, a reckless man approached Lilith. When he touched Lilith, all the men around stood up and tore their jaws apart. The women knelt down to worship the presence of a powerful demon. Although Mitch did not know how to capture Lilith, she brought with her an important clue. According to ancient books, there was a monastery that had existed for hundreds of years that had sealed Lilith. Looking at the drawing on the paper, Hub suddenly had an idea, so the two of them immediately set off to the deserted suburbs. Right after they left, Lucky led the police to arrest Kitty. Another group stopped Marion and Cade on their way out of town. The sheriff looked at the strange symbols and images on the wall and became even more convinced that this family was crazy and was determined to capture Hub at all costs. Hub was now transporting a large loudspeaker. For him, music was to Lilith what the smell of blood was to a shark. His plan was to set the frequency to about 50 kilohertz. He had to create a signal that would broadcast over a 48-kilometer radius. Humans wouldn't hear it, but to Lilith, it would be the sound that would destroy her. The lure was there, but how to get Lilith back to hell? Hub pointed to the map and told Mitch to look closely at these lines. They formed an inverted pentagonal formation. If that was how Lilith got to the human world, then perhaps that was how she got back. Meanwhile, Marion and Kitty were taken to the police station. No matter how they explained that Hub was innocent, no one would believe them. The sheriff didn't believe, and she even used Cade's freedom to threaten Marion. The sheriff forced Marion to lure Hub to the bar. Mitch and Hub on this side used branches to form magic symbols, and then used coffee cans to simulate an inverted pentagon. The two placed 5 cans in 5 corresponding positions, and then they hid them under layers of leaves. The music speaker was placed right in the middle of the formation. Hub said that he still hadn't figured out how to counter Lilith's mind control ability, but Mitch said that Lilith couldn't control their minds because they had both been to hell and could see demons. When the switch was turned on, the deep sound from the speaker system made the ground shake. Lilith in the distance seemed to be called by name. She immediately left the restaurant. Behind her were women who had just woken up from their trance. Lilith landed right next to the pentagon formation, but she didn't step inside. Seeing this, Hub had no choice but to step forward as bait. Lilith realized that someone was disturbing her private moment, so she angrily appeared behind him, grabbed him, and threw him into the formation. Then Lilith pressed him down on the windshield, but things didn't stop there. Lilith roared angrily and threw Hub straight into the air. She intended to throw him down from above. Seeing that Hub was in danger, Mitch only reacted in time. Mitch immediately activated the trap. 5 symbols appeared at the same time, and the pentagonal formation glowed and rose from the ground. When the barrier closed, Lilith and Hub were trapped inside. Lilith saw that she couldn't escape, so she angrily rushed towards Hub. However, she didn't harm him, but just sat down next to the car. Then Lilith begged Hub not to send her back to hell. She began to negotiate with Hub. Lilith promised that if Hub let her go, she would revive Lisa and help Hub escape from hell. That way, Hub would get the freedom he wanted. To prove that Lilith also healed all of Hub's wounds, Mitch panicked and stopped Hub and warned him not to believe the demon. But what Lilith said next made Hub believe her completely. As long as Lisa was alive, he was not a murderer and his family would forgive him. So this would be the perfect opportunity to start over. Hub ignored Mitch's warning and firmly agreed to Lilith's proposal. Hub approached one of the coffee cans and asked Lilith to fulfill her promise first. When Lilith's eyes glowed, she transferred her consciousness into the body of a black crow. The claw marks on Hub's hand faded, and he truly felt free. Immediately after that, Hub kicked the can away, dissolving the pentagon formation, and Lilith flew away from there. Mitch calls Hub a selfish bastard, but she doesn't know that Hub is about to pay a very high price for this choice. Hub takes the newly revived Lisa to Lucky's bar and teases him. Just then, Cade and Kitty rush in, panicking, warning Hub that the police are on their way to arrest him. However, Hub's face shows a calm expression. He explains that all the trouble has finally been solved. When Marion appears, Hub is excited to say that the claw marks on his hand have disappeared, but that joy only lasts for a short time because the police chief appears and orders her subordinates to handcuff Hub. Marion sadly rushes into the break room. While she is crying, a strange sound suddenly rings out behind her. A black crow appears and lands on the coat rack. Not long after, Lucky also appears at the scene. Lucky tries to comfort Marion, but before he can say anything, an invisible force sends him flying and slams him into the wall. At the same time, a melodious melody rings out. It made Lucky unable to control control himself and tear off his own lower jaw. When Hub was being escorted out of the bar, that strange sound suddenly rang out. Everyone immediately stopped. When Marion stepped onto the stage, all the men present simultaneously covered their faces with their hands, and the women knelt down to pay their respects. It was as if they were worshipping a dark goddess. In Hub's horrified eyes, Marion slowly transformed into the angel Lilith. After the song ended, Lilith looked straight at Hub. Lilith told Hub that the demons would never stop and they would not spare her. The demons would not spare Marion either. If Hub wanted Marion to survive, he had to submit to Lilith. Today's episode ends here. See you again in the next videos.